All right, welcome to the conversation on the TYT network. We've got a former congressional candidate for you guys, but here's a twist. This time it's a Republican. Fun for everybody. Michael Orestian ran in the 53rd district of California, and he was a Trump supporting Republican in that race. He did not prevail, as happens from time to time, and I would know. But Michael, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Great to be on the conversation.
Yeah, no problem. So Michael, I saw you when you were running for office in an interview say that you support everything Donald Trump has done. I find that to be stunning. So
hold on, I didn't say everything. I said I thought he wore his ties a little bit too long.
That's true. That is true.
Okay.
See, we have agreement already.
All right.
I don't want to be fake news, and you did say that. So. That's really interesting, Michael, to me on a couple of fronts. One, I think it's mental. We'll get to that in a second. But okay. Two, I'm curious if you were already disgruntled with the Republican Party, because Donald Trump holds a lot of positions that the Republican Party did not hold before him.
Oh, so, absolutely.
Right. So, for example, when the neocons ran the Republican Party, and we were told by all the Republicans, and by the way, not some of them, all of them, that the Iraq War was a great idea, and every other war was a great idea. And so I'm wondering,
that was your conversion moment.
Okay, yeah. So, and then we were told that all Republicans believe in free trade, and now we are told no, nobody believes in free trade. They're all for tariffs. So, right. Did you believe in those? Did you make a switch? Because you
I certainly had an evolution in my thinking. The two pillars that Trump went totally against the establishment Republicans on, and this is why you see so many never Trumpers on the right side of the aisle. Were trade and immigration, both focused at helping the middle class. I mean, from a standpoint of making sure that our supply chains are domestic, that our jobs can be some more sourced domestically, and I think he went against. Not only did he have to go against the Democrats, he had to go against so many establishment Republicans to make those cases. And yeah, I think there was evolution in my thought.
Yeah. So Michael, did Trump convert you on those issues?
Well, no. I mean, I think I've also witnessed the Brazilification of California, and I've been witnessing the withering of the middle class myself for a long period of time. So I can't say that Trump was the intro to those kinds of ideas. But certainly the kinds of working class and union voters that are supporting Trump now, I mean, those typically, those voters in the 80s and early 90s would have been absolutely behind Biden and the Democrats.
So you mentioned the Brazilification of California. Brazil's of course led by a right-wing authoritarian government, but I'm going to move past that.
But the middle class is gone. I mean, the effect of that socialism is
right-wing authoritarian governments that give all the advantages to the rich. So that brings me to Trump's tax cuts. So 83% of the tax cuts will go to the top 1%. It's absolutely destroyed the deficit and the debt. Are you now also changing your position that deficits and debt doesn't matter at all? And I'm glad we gave $1.9 trillion to mainly the rich in the form of tax cuts?
No, I don't know. And I would have to see your evidence that the 1.3 trillion that was repatriated and put back into companies. I mean, if you're suggesting that it was spent on stock buybacks and not employee hiring, then I don't think you could argue that the kind of low unemployment we've seen across the board wasn't in some ways affected by that repatriation, right?
No, first of all, that's not the case at all. So first of all, independent sources have said including in Donald Trump's own government, that it is now $1.9 trillion that it has cost us. Second of all, in terms of
but wouldn't you have that money get repatriated?
The companies that promised to hire folks with the money that they got did not do so. That is documented. In fact, a lot of them then turned around and bragged in their own meetings to shareholders. We cut costs, meaning we laid off a lot of people, and that's the proof is in the numbers. And then on top of that, we then give you to the stock buybacks, which allows the shareholders to make more money. And if they made that more money by selling more goods, et cetera, there's nothing wrong with that. But they made the money because they got giant tax cuts. And no, and then to say, hey, we had low unemployment for a while, which we had under Obama. Trump continued it for a while. And then now we have spectacularly horrible unemployment. So
okay,
it's nothing but
pre-crisis, post-crisis. No, but how can you explain the record low unemployment numbers across the board without suggesting that some of that repatriation was actually used to hire locally? I think that would be disingenuous to make that case.
So first of all, do you concede that Obama's unemployment numbers were even lower than Trump's?
I saw a slow march out of recession. I didn't see the kinds of meteoric growth that we saw.
No, that's just not true. That's just not true. So now Trump did continue that, and Michael, you're familiar with the concept of bubbles. Obviously, it happened in 2000. It happened in 2008. Sure. And here, look, I'm not a guy who likes the Democratic Party. So I think Obama overinflated the markets as well, because both Democratic and Republican politicians, including and especially Donald Trump, have given everything to the wealthiest multinational corporations. And what it does is, yes, it creates for a while an overinflated market, which looks good, and then it crashes. It's happened every time. It's like Herbert Hoover saying the roaring 20s were going great until the Great Depression. Yeah, that's what happens. And the minute you have any kind of shock to the system, those bubbles burst and you get the disaster that we're in right now.
Well, so how would you describe I mean, look, I looked at price to earnings ratios and I said, holy cow, there's no way there's gonna be a reset. Then there was COVID, then there was a little bit of a reset, and now how would you explain the current climb? Is everybody just trying to get their last bit of profit off the table before putting all their money in gold? What would you suppose happening?
100%. You see the Federal Reserve, the monetary policy is so loose. The interest rate is nearly zero, which is totally artificial. And that creates this overvaluation of the stock market. But when you look at the real economy, wages have been stagnant for 45 years. And yes, I blame Republicans, but I also blame Democrats for that. Clinton and Obama went along with that all throughout. And wages are disastrous right now. They're incredibly low. They just will not go up. Because those corporations take all of the profit, all of the margin off the table, and they have crooked politicians like Donald Trump help them do that. And on top of that, we now have over 20 million unemployed and 200,000 dead. Are you saying that, for example, that he's handled the coronavirus well when we have the worst number of cases and the worst number of deaths in the whole world?
Look, I don't think you can say, I mean, Congress got a briefing on the 24th of January. On the 31st of January, he shuts down travel from China. Everybody calls him a xenophobe. And then in the ensuing weeks, they're saying, come on down to Chinatown, the water's fine. How else would you have responded to the coronavirus? I mean, daily briefings. Without doing the Defense Production Act, he got such amazing public-private partnerships in place to build all these ventilators that it turns out weren't needed because that's not how the virus infects you. What would you have done differently?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. First of all, two obvious answers. One is testing and contact tracing. That's what New Zealand did, South Korea did, Taiwan did, Germany did, and they all greatly reduced the number of cases and deaths. It's not that complicated. You test people overwhelmingly, and the minute you find out who they've been in contact with, you get them in quarantine so you can reopen the economy and everybody else can be fine. And then on top of that, masks. I mean, it's the bare minimum. He sent masks to China. As he was telling Bob Woodward, he knew what a plague it was. Okay. And then he would not order the masks. It's the easiest thing in the world. And he didn't do the bare minimum.
But the irony, what I'm hearing from you, which I didn't expect, is that you're suggesting that he took too aggressive an approach and should have been a lot more targeted in terms of that testing.
No, I didn't say that at all. He was a total weakling and totally incompetent in doing the bare minimum, masks and testing. I agree with you on the ventilators.
37 different kinds of tests.
He did an okay job on ventilators, and it wasn't his fault that the ventilators were not as needed as people originally thought. But on masks and testing, it was a disaster.
Okay, all right. Well, like in my opinion, contact tracing opens us up to a whole new set of social constraints that already people felt like there was a little bit too much government encroachment on this. My feeling is that we should have just targeted the at-risk community. Even the CDC themselves has now come clearly on their website saying that 94% of the cases that they had previously listed as positive cases are, in terms of deaths, were comorbidities, and they lay it flat out to you. And I think our response to the pandemic has been far more dangerous.
No, please don't play with the numbers. The comorbidity just means that yes, there are other factors that are issues with people. That is not what they died of. They did, like, for example, if I died of coronavirus, they would say, yes, you have comorbidity because you were overweight. But just being overweight doesn't kill you unless you
No.
You see what I'm saying? It's a coronavirus.
No, it would have to be a different kind of pneumonia or something. Comorbidity. They're not going to. They're just.
No, obesity and being overweight is a comorbidity. It really, and in fact, it's one of the top ones. So,
right, but.
Yeah,
right.
So no, those are all coronavirus deaths. There's no question about it.
But you're in California with me. I mean, we listened to Gavin Newsom saying unless we shut down for 15 days, we're likely to have 3.6 million deaths on our hands. And that's what we all followed suit, and we were all 100% on board with that. Well, and so now having a mere 200,000 deaths, which is gnarly, but certainly throughout the course of any year, we do have a number of old age deaths. So how can we sit here and say that we haven't had in some way a success? There has to have been some efficacy to this response if we're talking about orders of magnitude difference between what was laid out. 3.6 million we're gonna die in California.
Michael, it's 200,000 extra deaths, and it's the worst in the world. So saying, well, maybe somebody thought it could have been worse. But as it turns out, Trump broke the record, but not as much as we thought he was going to, is not a great excuse. We're out of time. I got to ask you one last thing, because I'm always so curious about this, and I hope we can do it again. But Trump did not build a wall, and his comical claim that he was going to make Mexico pay for it, people have dropped. But I'm just curious, did you always know that he was lying when he said Mexico was going to pay for it, or are you disappointed that he didn't even try?
No, it's not like Mexico's gonna write a check saying this is for the wall. We have $27 billion every year in remittances that go from Western Union to Latin American countries. There are any number of ways to collect on said wall.
But he didn't.
No, we don't know that. I mean, the relationship between AMLO and Trump is remarkable, and I don't think. I mean, we're at 300 miles of new wall built, and we've seen an order of magnitude drop in terms of border crossings. I don't see how you see.
And so at one point, there were more record crossings under Trump than there were under Obama.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not in favor of this, but Obama actually deported more people than Trump did. And believe me, if Donald Trump had gotten Mexico to pay for it, he would have told us.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's not going to be a line item expenditure. There's so many different places of trade where there's ways to get that accomplished. So I obviously, clearly, we need a follow-on conversation for the conversation.
Okay, sounds good, Michael. I appreciate you coming on. Be a good sport.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I agree. We should do it again. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. All right, cheers.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.